Good morning, everyone. I feel like I didn't execute that very well, so let's try it again. Good morning, everyone. Today is editing day, actually, so much different pace from my last videos, but I definitely think we need to touch base on some editing. So Luminar, so this is all about Luminar. It is a company that I work with on tours, and they asked me if I would be open to doing a tutorial on my YouTube channel. So of course, because okay, so before we get into the editing portion, I want to explain a little bit about what I've seen with Luminar and like my thoughts on it, because I'm a Photoshop user, so that's where I'm coming from. So Luminar has been a brand new software for me to use. I've had to kind of go build up a new workflow using it, and I definitely have some thoughts about it that I would love to share. Well, the first thing that I've noticed is that Luminar solves a lot of problems, and I'm always listening to clients, I'm always listening to people in messages asking me about editing, and the one thing that I notice everybody says is they do not have time to spend on their edits, like hours and hours and hours. And that is pretty common when you're using Photoshop. So I've been a Photoshop user for like about 10 years. So I've already built up all like the complicated techniques that you can use. And obviously I have my own workflow there. But I can definitely see, like a new photographer or someone who is trying to expand and grow their editing right now, that it's extremely daunting to use. So this is actually where Luminar comes in for me. So basically what Luminar has done is all of these complicated editing techniques, like the Orton effect, focus stacking, all of that stuff, like that's a process of steps within Photoshop. Like it could be 15 steps, who knows how many, but it's a process to put it all together. But if you do this in Luminar, it's just kind of like a one-click thing. So they've completely solved those problems. And what I also notice is that there's the ability, and I'm going to show you this when we get to the editing portion, but there's an ability with Luminar to be very creative. So it's not just like the basic panel of, you know, like develop highlights, shadows, all of that stuff. Of course that's there, but there's also this extra. And for me, again, it's like the creative portion. Like the Orton effect is a one-click button, whereas in Photoshop, it may have taken me a few steps to achieve that. So that's huge. And I think this is actually very big for people who want to have a simple editing workflow that is really, really quick. So anyways, let's stop talking. Let's just get right into the editing, and I'm going to show you 3 things about Luminar that have really stood out to me. All right, so this is the catalog of Luminar Neo. This is where you would import all your images, so on and so forth. As you can see, I have been working on some of my yellow dress images here, but today I am only going to show you 3 things that are pretty much essential for me if I were to be using Luminar Neo. So let's start with probably the most advanced, and you're gonna see just how incredibly easy this is. Like it actually almost blows my mind how easy it is. So it's about focus stacking. So I have these 2 images right here. They are raw files, nothing has been done to them. One of them I focused close up on the foreground, and then the other one was in the background. So basically all you do is you select both of your images. So I have them both selected here. We grab them and we drag them over to this little box that says focus stacking. We put them in there and we hit stack, and then Luminar is going to do its thing. I'm not going to cut out the time, just so you can kind of see on average like how much time this actually takes. You see, it's pretty quick. So now we have this. Let's open it up and have a look at it. So now we have a completely like focus stacked image. And again, there has been no other edits done on this one. I'm not going to show you any more edits on this one, but I really wanted to show you the power of the focus stacking. And I'm a person who focus stacks my images all the time because I photograph like this really close to foregrounds. Again, I only do typically 2. I'll focus stack on the foreground and then I'll do 1 for the background. But sometimes in Photoshop, what I notice is there will just be weird artifacts in some places. Like maybe if I did this in Photoshop, there's going to be some funky bits in the trees, like just where it's trying to blend it. Sometimes it doesn't always look seamless. But so far, I have focus stacked this image here in Luminar 3 times before starting to record this video. And it's like flawless every time. It does an incredible job. And that's it. Honestly, that is all you have to do. It is just, it's amazing. An amazing focus stacking ability in this program. All right, so we are back in the catalog. That was the focus stacking portion. Now we are going to edit a little bit one of my yellow dress images. So this one right here. So I've clicked on the photo, and then we're going to go into the edit panel. And it's going to load. So as you can see, real-time loading. So first, I'm going to talk about 2 things with this image because I think that these 2 things are very important. Again, for many of us, we are familiar with Lightroom, we're familiar with Photoshop, so I do think it's essential that we're not totally thrown off when we're using another software to edit. And this is going to be pretty basic what I'm going to show you, but it's very important because this is kind of how you build the foundation of your edit. So as you can see here, we have this panel of all of this stuff here, and we will go through it. But the main thing that you want to have access to is this develop panel right here. And basically the develop panel, you can consider it like the same as Camera Raw or the same panel as in Lightroom. It does all the same stuff. It has curves, it has color, sharpness, noise reduction. It has everything. And in the light section, this is where you would adjust highlights and shadows and, just those very basic things. So obviously, typically with me, I bring down my highlights a little bit, bring my shadows up a little bit. I'm also going to bump up a little bit of contrast. So I do want to actually talk about this image a little bit because as you can see, I have blown out, this is where the sun was, and obviously naturally it has been blown out. With further editing, I can definitely, do something about this. I don't at this moment know what I would do. I'd have to work on the image, but I just want to note that I'm very aware that it's like that. However, I want the light there because when I edit it more, I'm going to use this portion to my advantage. So in the develop panel, again, it's just all the basic stuffs. Like we can really pump the blacks, we can pump up the whites. Very effective. It doesn't feel like I'm not using, it doesn't feel like I am like an uncharted territories using this editing program. So here we have the color tab. This is obviously your basic white balance, all that stuff. I'm going to just cool this image down just a little bit because it is pretty snowy. But after this, there's definitely a lot of things that I would still do to edit this image. Like I'd go through some noise reduction, sharpness, so on and so forth. But I want to now touch base on which I think is the coolest part about using Luminar Neo. So to get really creative, as you can see here, we're going down to the creative panel. But to get really creative with your photography in Photoshop, it takes a lot of steps. Let's go, for example, the Orton effect is super popular and many landscape photographers use it. There's a variety of different ways to do it in Photoshop, but it is a process of steps within that program. And what Luminar has done is they've made it happen within one click of a button. So you can't find it on here, it doesn't say Orton effect under the creative tab, but it's actually in the glow section. So let's have a look at that. So here we have this, and it says type. So we have soft focus, glow, Orton effect soft. For simplicity's sake, let's just do the Orton effect because that does seem to be the most popular with people. So click on the Orton effect, and then we can just slide it up until obviously your taste, what you like. I would never put it up to 100 because that looks crazy, but usually I do the Orton effect pretty low, but maybe even something around there, just a nice bit of a glowy effect. But let's take that back down because I want to show you how simple the masking is with this as well. So let's go over to the masking tab. And as you can see, there's a brush, there's linear gradient, radial gradient, and AI mask. For simplicity's sake, we're just going to use the brush. So we're going to grab a nice, fairly sized, decent brush. Let's just bring that up a little bit. And let's just say I don't want the Orton effect on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint all around Sarah. And there's a bazillion ways that you could do this, but let's just show you the brush capabilities. All right, so I've created my mask. Now I'm going to go back into adjustments. And then with that mask, like everything should be affected except for me. And that is what I love about the masking abilities of Luminar. Like it is so simple, so simple and so quick. I'm going to leave the Orton effect off for now because there is actually something that I like to use if I feel like the Orton effect isn't really working in my favor. So it totally is dependent on the image, and when you edit your own, absolutely this is something that you would want to look into to see, you know, what fits. So I really like this mystical function, and to be quite honest, like I don't know exactly how to explain what it does. But for me, it's very similar to the Orton effect, but with this nice snowy scene, I just find it works a little bit better. So we're not going to mask it. We're simply just going to bring it up and get the effect. So it really is like creating that sort of glowy effect, but it definitely seems to be more, for me, it's like more affecting the darks and stuff. I don't know. It's just giving it this little bit of a different glow than what the Orton effect was. And so these are like the two main things when I come in here. This is what I look for. And I want to point out something else. Even if you don't feel like you would use all of these functions in here, that is fine. Like there's a ton of them that I honestly am never going to use because it just doesn't match my photography. And this is more specifically for people who are coming from Photoshop. You can actually have Luminar Neo as a plugin for Photoshop. So let's just say you prefer to edit in Photoshop, you want to do all of your camera raw adjustments there, but you like the creative panel of Luminar. Well, you can still have access to that through the plugin. So you can simply, you know, quickly come in and add some of this mystical effect to it or add some of this glow effect to it, and it's quick and it's done, and you can stay in Photoshop and do it. Okay, so there are times where I have been shooting, and of course I have wanted to have like a nice mystical scene with nice moody fog, but that has never been, you know, sometimes it just doesn't always line up. But you can add fog with Luminar. However, there's something else that I think it does a really cool job of, and it's not, you know, it doesn't flow for me with the intention of adding fog into the image, but I'll show you what I mean. So the fog, adding fog is in this right here. It's in atmosphere. As you can see, there's different modes: fog, layered fog, mist, haze. So we're just going to stay on the fog. So a lot of the times when I edit my images is I like to have the foreground a lot like darker because I like to lead the eye to the light or to the background. And the backgrounds are typically, when you photograph it on your camera, like they are a little bit hazy. They're not nearly as sharp and punchy as what is as close to the camera. And I actually really do like that look, and I'm starting to use it more and more in my editing. So let's just bump up this fog slider, and as you can see, the background there is just getting more and more like kind of has this nice like hazy look. I mean, we're completely losing detail of the sky, so I'm not necessarily sure that this is the best photo to use as an example. But what I was explaining before, how I love going from like dark and then traveling through to the rest of the image so that it's much lighter in the background. Even though the intention is to add fog, I think that it just helps create like some nice atmosphere there in the background. So this is a super cool tool. And again, I use it kind of in a different way, but if you want to add fog to it, you are more than able to. All right. Now, the last thing that I want to show you is, I know some of you have seen my Photoshop editing tutorials, and you know that I always flatten my layers. Like every time I make an adjustment, I flatten my layers. I never keep a panel of layers open that I go back and edit. But with Luminar, that's already done for you. Like, you don't even have to think. So here, tools, this shows all of this, and then we go into edits, and you can see that everything that I showed you shows up here. So you can go back in, you could go back into the Orton effect and adjust that if you needed to. You could go back into where I added the fog and quickly adjust that. So for people like me who were ones that were flattening layers, this is super, super cool because it's like, it's just there. I don't even have to think about it. I just toggle back and forth between tools and edits. And if you want to just get rid of everything, all you have to do is simply press this discard edits and you're back to your original photo. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I was able to help you with Luminar and just show you the possibilities of what it can do. You can head down to my description below. There will be an affiliate link. You can get discounts. Like Luminar always has something going on. So I highly suggest go checking out the program, and it probably is the right fit for you, to be quite honest, because it is very simple to use. Anyway, that's a wrap for this video, so I will talk to you guys next week. Bye!